All right, folks. How y'all doing today? You don't have to answer. My name is Jeremy Miller, and today I'm going to be talking to you about building an architecture, a CQRS architecture using event sourcing. But with all that, we're going to use the Critter Stack tools. So today, in the 30 minutes we have, we're going to do a very quick deep dive into the Critter Stack tools. I am assuming that you have some foreknowledge of both CQRS and event sourcing. So maybe be warned. Maybe you want to go off and read a little intro to event sourcing before you watch this if you're not. But let's jump in right now. So just a tiny bit about me. I have been part of the .NET community since the very, very beginning, all the way back in .NET 1.0. As a matter of fact, with the Thanksgiving week coming up in the US, I'm pretty sure that my first .NET coding was during the Thanksgiving week of 2003 to do a proof of concept using the newfangled .NET 1.0. Right now, I am the owner and founder of Jasper FX Software, LLC. Along with my contributors and collaborators, we are trying to build a sustainable business model around the Critter Stack tools and the open source tools we're going to look at today. I've been heavily involved with open source efforts in the .NET platform, dating all the way back to StructureMap. That was the very first production-ready IOC tool all the way back in 2004. So I'm old. Hey, the Critter Stack tools. It's mainly two tools. An older library called Martin that's been around since about 2016, and Wolverine that went 1.0 this year, but it's in production, been in development slowly for about 6 or 7 years. Just took a little while to get to 1.0. These tools are all for server-side development in .NET. Just philosophically today, the goals that we have with these projects, and I'll let you decide if we really meet these by the end of the talk. We're trying to build out a very low ceremony coding model. We're trying to minimize the intrusion of framework elements or the tool elements into your own code. Trying to minimize the amount of mechanical steps you have to take with your infrastructure to get anything done. And more or less, we're trying to just get completely out of the way. We're very invested in the idea of agile software development, and that means fast feedback cycles, that means testing. So we're trying to both help you create code that is highly testable in unit tests, where the infrastructure gets out of the business domain logic. But then when you do need to go to integration testing, we want to have a great experience for integration testing. Now, when we talk about low friction, part of what we mean here is what a former colleague of mine used to call time to login screen. If I pick up a code base that I haven't really been into before, I do git clone, pull it down for the very first time. How fast can I have this application up and running? Either can I have the system running on my box, or probably a little more for me, how fast can I be running integration tests? So setting up databases, setting up any kind of messaging queues, any other infrastructure, how fast can I be up and going? Because what you don't want is to have somebody say, here's a giant Confluence page or wiki page with 3 pages of instructions of all the things you have to do to your box before you can run this application. Good luck. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it doesn't. Don't bother me. I'm busy. Right? That's what you don't want. All right. So the first tool, the older one, the Martin library. And if you're not familiar with it, Martins are little critters. They're very similar, very closely related to weasels. They're crazy cute. If you go look for pictures of Martins, just set a timer so you don't lose all day looking at cute pictures of Martins. This is an open source library. It is a fancy wrapper around the ADO.NET providers for Postgres. It was originally built to be a document database on top of Postgres, but it also originally had a little event sourcing function kind of off the side. Hey, this is cool. We'll throw it out there. In real usage, well, plenty of people still use the document store. It's still there. Martin has turned in usage-wise, most of the interest in Martin is from the event sourcing. So it has become an event sourcing tool that, oh, by the way, also has a document database feature off to the side, much to my surprise. The newer member of the Critter Stack is a tool called Wolverine. This one is a full-fledged framework. It's really all about executing commands. Giving a command or a request, execute it. So all the things that you would expect, middleware, a middleware strategy, being able to have lots of logging on it, be able to handle cross-cutting concerns. That command functionality is exposed in multiple ways. You can get it at it through invoking it directly, very similar to the older mediator tool. And you can, in fact, use Wolverine as a straight up replacement for mediator or alternative. It also has a local queuing model that can actually be database backed if you need to, but a local queuing model based on the TPL data flow library. It's like an underappreciated gem in the .NET world. And it also allows asynchronous messaging. So using underlying transports like RabbitMQ, AWS, SQS, Azure Service Bus, Kafka, soon will be Pulsar, a few other options. You can exchange messages in a very robust way between one Wolverine node and another Wolverine node, or a Wolverine node and who knows what on the other end. And then lastly, and this isn't as big a deal as it sounds, but it's also an alternative HTTP service framework. Don't worry, you're not really leaving the confines of ASP.NET Core. The ASP.NET Core team has actually done a really good job of making the ASP.NET Core framework, hard to say, but they've done a great job of making it very modular, where it is actually pretty simple to mix and match alternative endpoint models like Wolverine's HTTP model. So at any time, you could very happily be mixing and matching Wolverine's HTTP endpoints with MVC core controllers for minimal API endpoints, or completely other separate models like fast endpoints. ASP.NET Core turned out to be a great model that way. And lastly, Wolverine is absolutely usable without Martin. Martin is certainly usable without Wolverine. But we've invested a lot in the Wolverine plus Martin integration. And that's what we're going to dive in today as a very low ceremony model specifically for doing event sourcing and CQRS. Now, if you're listening to this talk, you are almost certainly involved with software development in one form or another. So it's very likely that your life is at least partly controlled by some kind of issue tracking system, an incident tracking system. So let's pretend we're going to build a very tiny, simplistic service for tracking incidents, a help desk API. So what I'm showing up on the screen, this is an artifact. This is a requirements process related to event sourcing called event storming. Now, the general idea, this is originally based on the idea that you would go to Walgreens, go to Office Depot, and grab a pack of sticky notes, which has become orange, blue, green, I think yellow. The way we'll start, the first thing we'll do is we'll have the business domain experts. We'll ask them, hey, tell us about the business events within the workflow of the system that change state. That's what we're doing here with event sourcing. We're actually modeling the changes in state rather than the current state of the system. That'll become clear in a second. So idiomatically, we're going to ask them in their own terminology, want to use past tense to denote this is something that's already happened. So first, we'll put yellow, orange stickies. We'll brainstorm. We'll say incident logged, incident categorized. We're going to decide what kind of problem is it. Is it hardware related? Is it database related? Is it software? Whatnot. And then today, we're also going to look at incident prioritized. Somebody or a system process is going to decide, hey, this is high, low, medium, whatever it's going to be. But anytime that state changes, we're going to capture an event for that. That's the first step. So that's what we see in orange. The second step is we're going to ask ourselves, well, what are the transactions, the commands that might lead to triggering off these events? And we'll put those on blue stickies, and we'll try to put them, roughly gather them up so they categorize, make a relationship between this command is probably resulting in this event. And I should say, for any event sourcing purists or enthusiasts out there, this is not necessarily a one-to-one relationship. And even in the simple examples today, I'll try to show a zero-to-many relationship between a command and the events that get assigned. And then lastly, we have all these little events. We have incident log, we have categorize, resolve, prioritize. That's all great. At some point in time, I really do need to know what is the current state of an incident. What is all the current state of that? Who's assigned to it? I don't necessarily care about the history. Just tell me what it is right now. So lastly, we're going to talk about views, and that's what you see in green. So as we think about what we need to build out both these commands and what we need to display to users, we'll start imagining, well, these are the projected views of the events that we're going to need to have within our system. So that's in green. So when I talk about Martin here in just a second, this is what Martin calls a projection. Being able to take a stream of events, stream of related events, and play that and create a current state. Don't worry, we're going to make that really concrete in just a second. All right, so just a little bit to talk about some of the endpoints and message handlers we're going to look at today. So following the rough process, we're going to log a new incident. A customer is probably going to log an incident. Then a support technician of some sort, or really us, we're going to go take a look at the incident in the UI, and we're going to decide what the category is from their description. From there, the help desk API, as it's processing this command, it may decide to, by itself, it may issue a command to try to go prioritize the incident. And in this case, we're going to handle this with an internal Wolverine handler. Whereas these are HTTP endpoints, this is going to be an internal handler. And then finally, any enterprise system, eventually there's almost inevitably going to be some kind of dedicated notification service. It's sending emails, texts, whatever. For whatever reason, we always want to shove that off to the side. Let's just pretend for the sake of argument here, we want a separate notification service microservice. So in a little simple, I'm just going to show how Wolverine can kick that out to RabbitMQ. All right, so CQRS system here. Commands, command, a query, other commands. Now let's talk about some of the challenges we have trying to build this system, the things we just need to take care of before we jump in the code. So, one, we're already talking right off the bat, we're going to mess with databases. So Martin's storing things to Postgres. So it's going to need Postgres tables, maybe some functions, some sequences. Wolverine is going to, Wolverine itself is also going to set up some other Postgres tables for transactional inbox and outbox that I'll talk to and get there. So it has its own set of tables. And we already talked, we're going to do just a little bit of messaging with RabbitMQ. So we also need to have at least one RabbitMQ exchange set up. So it would be nice if the application itself could just set that up for you. Again, this idea of clean clone, how fast can I be up and running? It turns out you can get up a lot faster if the tooling itself in your application, the Wolverines, the Martins, if they can just set it up for you on the fly in development mode. One way or another, across our HTTP endpoints, you always have to validate user inputs because users are pesky, they do silly things. You can never trust that they're going to give you valid data. So just generically, and this would be a great place to use some middleware, which is exactly what we're going to do. With this help desk system, it's perfectly possible that two different technicians, two developers, two testers, two of something, are going to pull down a new incident at the same time. And they may be clicking buttons to categorize, prioritize, do things all at the same time. And we want to protect the system against concurrent access. And we're going to do this today. I'm going to show using Wolverine and Martin support for optimistic concurrency. So we can say, nope, somebody's changed the system since you're working off stale data. Nope. So protect the system that way. And finally, we're going to talk a lot about how to test the system and all the things that Wolverine and Martin do for you to try to make your system as testable as possible. Okay, that's been a lot of talk. Make a quick drink, and we're going to go on to the code finally. All right. So first, I want to do a very simplistic demo of Martin event sourcing, so you have a little bit of context about how the persistence works. So let's talk a little bit about what our events look like. Say that our events, we talked about incident logged, incident categorized, just very simple .NET structures. These can be records. You see some of them are records. Some of them I have set up as classes. I I think that might have been because I was fighting with JSON serialization and I was too lazy to fix it. But typically records work really well. This sample here, I've got a reference to Martin. In just a second, I'm going to spin up Postgres in a Docker container. So it's set up to be at port 5433 instead of the default, but this is the connection string to the Docker Compose file I'm going to use. To get started with Martin, I am going to spin up a document store. This is not something you normally do yourself. This is normally done through service collection extension methods. We're going to do this crudely today. The document store is a singleton within your system. It's expensive. If I have any old in Hibernate veterans, this would be the equivalent of a session factory from in Hibernate. If you're used to EF Core, the DB context is just its own thing. It doesn't have that split. But the session here, now I'm going to create the session. So this is the unit of work for Martin. If you're used to EF Core, this would be your equivalent of a DB context. Spin that up. Now I'm going to start a new stream. And what a stream means is just a related set of events, in this case for one incident. I'm also going to mark it as these being related to an incident aggregate. We're going to come back to that. But we're going to start the stream and we're going to add a logged, categorized, and prioritized event. Actually, let's change that real quick. Famous last words of the guy doing live coding. One thing we can also do is start it, of course, but we can also append and just add more events to an existing string. So 2 different transactions. Coming down below, a little bit of ugly stuff here. We're going to look at, we're just going to take a look at the events that were persisted for right now. All right. So let me pop into a terminal real quick and try to prove here that there's nothing up my sleeves. We're going to spin up a new Docker container. So we have a database from scratch, nothing's pre-built. And then I'm going to run this demo real quick. And there we go. So scrolling up a little bit, what I've done is I've queried for the events that have already been persisted. So I'm just pulling it back out and printing it out with a little bit of pre-print. So what you're seeing here is the raw data that we persisted originally. That's the data, description, log by, and then just to give you an idea, a little bit of the metadata that Martin is tracking for you. What a .NET type this is, giving it a logical name to try to help with migrations. It's also tracking position within the event stream, within the event log itself. When was it tracked? Martin has a lot of support for multi-tenancy we're not going to get into today. And once this is in play with Wolverine, you can also get some open telemetry type data as well. I didn't capture here, but you can. So you can trace full correlation and causation IDs all the way from a web request to Martin storing the events that all related. So just try to give you some distributed tracing all the way through. So this is strictly capturing events. And the next thing that's a little more interesting is, you see here, I am also loading. I'm also creating an incident, projecting this all into a piece of incident data. So what I'm doing here with Martin is I'm saying, I want you to go load up all the persisted events for this one incident ID, and I want you to combine those into this incident structure. So I'm gonna have to let you go to the Martin documentation later to get a complete understanding of what's going on here. But these methods here, the apply, the create, this is exposed. Martin knows how to call these methods. It's doing pattern matching around you, and it is building up an incident object for you that exactly matches the state of your events. So if you're a functional programming person, this is a left fold operation. Running through it one at a time. In this case, this projection is set up to use immutable objects. You don't have to use immutable objects if you need to be a little bit faster, but Martin can also support immutable objects. Either way. So lastly, in our terminal, just to show you, The last thing we did is just printed out the JSON of take all those events and now show me what the current state is. And that's what you see here. All right. So from here, now I want to go into, let's look at adding Martin and Wolverine to an application. All right. So pretty typical program.main file for ASP.NET Core 7 and up. I'm going to, from the services, I'm going to add Martin. And you just see the biggest thing I need to do is connect it to the connection string. But I'm also going to add a projection here. So in this case, I need to kind of tell it, hey, Martin, I want you to use this projection. And it's set up to be an inline, which just means this projected document is going to be updated every time we capture events for a certain incident. That'll be important in a second. Giving you a little more taste. I'm also setting it up to integrate with Wolverine. This is from an extra Wolverine.Martin package. This is going to add us in transactional middleware. It's going to add us in transactional outbox support for Wolverine. And then lastly, I'm going to set up event forwarding to Wolverine. If we have time, I'm going to show an example of using that. In Wolverine itself, this time the extension method is on the iHost builder. So .NET idiom, it's use tool if it's on the iHost builder. It's add tool if it's on the service collection. Because it's on host, choose Wolverine. Now, I'm already opting into several options. We talked about making the system robust. Wolverine's error handling can do a lot more than this, but one category of errors would be transient errors, database errors here. Things where a database gets loaded or there's network hiccups. You just have kind of some chaotic hiccups occasionally. It doesn't mean that the message is invalid or the transaction is invalid. It just means, hey, it's okay to go ahead and retry this. And what we're doing here at this retry with cooldown, it's the simplest possible type of error handling. I'm doing a little bit of crude exponential back off of just kind of slowing down the system. The system may be under duress. We're going to slow down processing a little bit, kind of maybe the database will catch up and then we can go on full speed. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to a lot more of these. But I want to hurry up and we're going to get to our first HTTP endpoint. Oh, sorry, one more thing. So we added Martin to our IOC container. That's going to add that document store and document session. So it's all ready to go. It's all scoped the right way. Now, at the bottom here, when we start applying at the app, this is where we started applying .NET endpoints. I could mix and match minimal API calls. I think I could run MVC controllers for right now. This is going to map Wolverine endpoints. Just to give you a little idea here. There's a lot of different pieces that can be mixed and matched. But I've added Wolverine FX HTTP. This adds the ASP.NET Core support for Wolverine. Okay. So I'm adding just a little bit of middleware specifically for the HTTP things inside of Wolverine. Finally, all that being said, let's finally look at what our endpoint's going to look like. So to log an incident, this would be our request body, given a customer ID, some contact information, and a description of the problem. Let's create a new incident. We also want to validate it. I'm going to say this is something I picked up from somebody else's example of doing vertical slice architecture I liked. I'm just throwing the fluent validation validator as an inner class of the input body, so it can all be together. I think that's kind of nice. I do anyway. This is what will be the response type here in a second. And this is the endpoint. Let me talk about it. This is the main method here. So posting this body to this, effectively this method right here. Let's talk about what it's doing. So a few things right off the bat that is going to be different than using MVC core. You'll notice I made it a static class. Why not? Wolverine doesn't force you to use a static, but we're trying really hard to minimize object allocations. So we're kind of pushing you more or less to functional decomposition. Back off of the IOC container a little bit. We're going to pass things directly as arguments into the method. Minimal API already does this. I believe the latest MVC core will as well, without having to junk it up with from service attributes. Wolverine just takes it farther. So our main event, given the request body, and I'll talk about this user. Given this data, now we can tell we're going to create one new event for our new invoice stream. This is a little Wolverine helper, just to kind of declare, hey, I would start a new event stream, mark this incident, and here are the events. It's going to assign it a sequential GUID as its identifier, which is what we're seeing here. And then my response, the response here, I'm actually returning two different things. You know, the one, this is what I want to do with Martin, and this is response body. Let's back up a little bit, because I realize there's a lot of magic going on. So we have fluid validation going on. In there somewhere, this user guy looks kind of magic too, but it's being loaded from misspelled class. So a little bit of middleware from Wolverine. This is going to be run before every. This is going to run before every HB endpoint. So grab the claims principal. So whatever we've got for security setup, we're going to go try to find a claim matching this, and we're going to try to parse it to GUID, because that's what we've decided we're going to use here. And if it's all good, I'm going to say no problems, keep going. If there's not a valid user ID, we're going to stop this. I want the request to stop with a 400 status code and get out of there. And I'm going to always going to use problem details to denote, hey, something's not good, we're going to fail. All right? So looking at our endpoint, tons and tons of magic. Let's unravel the magic and explain what's going on and what's significant about it. So what we do, okay, there's a point. All right. So Wolverine works very differently than other tools that are similar to it. And instead of having an adapter interface that you have to implement, instead, Wolverine is going to wrap itself around your code. It's going to adapt to your code. It's going to generate code around that. And it's going to try to generate the most efficient code possible. We look at the code that it's generating around it. You can see places where it's creating a session, it is evaluating, it is deserializing, it is evaluating the validation. That's what's happening here. And here, our user detection, for example. This is all static, nothing's being created. We're trying to create as few objects as possible. We are wrapping in. We're going to write the problems, get out, and return to 400 if it's gone. You can see the same thing with the fluid validation. So much less IOC overhead, much less object creation overhead than the equivalent application using other .NET tools. So a lot of magic. Wolverine is admittedly a lot of magic, but it also has this capability to show you exactly the code that it's using to generate all this magic, unravel the magic for you. And then what's special about Wolverine is trying really hard to create a world where your business logic is in pure functions, meaning I push input in, I get output out. So that is a whole lot of information in a half hour. Would hope check out a lot more, but the Martin website, the Wolverine website, the Jasper FX software. By the time this posts, we will be officially offering formal support contracts and plans so that these tools are viable for usage in real companies. And lastly, any questions you have about any of the tools, come join the Critter Staff Discord. We'll be happy to talk to you or take suggestions. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of .NET Conf.